Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as we continue in our series of evening presentations for orientation. It's great that you could join us today, and I am very pleased to introduce to you Lydia Kennedy, who is our Senior Director for the University of Arizona Health Sciences Office of Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion. She does an incredible job creating programming and just a whole series of presentations throughout the year on a wide range of issues related to diversity, and I think it's a national symposium every spring, and just brings in, I'm sorry?
Yes, we do a national symposium.
Yeah, and it's really incredible, bringing in great speakers and just all kinds of wonderful presentations like that. She's here to do an introduction to her SafeZone training, kind of an abbreviation of that. It's not a full SafeZone training. And I'll turn it over to Lydia. Thank you so much, Lydia, for joining us. We always appreciate this presentation, and we learned so much from you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you to Michael and the team. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with each and every one of you. I had an opportunity to create various series with Banner, over 1,500 clinical staff and call center, Arizona Cancer Center have been trained as well. Happy to share this information with you tonight. Like Michael said, this is introductory, but we do like to start off with session agreements. We have the permission to be imperfect with regards to homophobia, heterosexism, transphobia, cisgender privilege. If you're not aware of those terms, we will talk through them through the session. We have the permission to ask questions. Please ask questions. That's what I'm here for. We have permission to not feel guilty, but also take responsibility for what we can do to make things better. We can trust that people are doing the best they can. We will respect the privacy of others here on this Zoom. We value the voices in this room, and we lead by example, and we want to ultimately create a brave and safe space. Is there anything else that we can do during this 45-minute workshop with you tonight to make it feel safe? And I just need some help monitoring the chat, and we're good to go. And feel free to take yourself off mute. Okay, so Michael, if you can help me monitor folks if they have any questions, that would be great. Okay.
I'll be happy to do that, yes.
Let's get started then. So I'm Lydia Kennedy. I use feminine pronouns, she, her, ella is because I identify as Latina. And the other thing too is, why does this training matter? This training matters for several reasons. And one of the things is that many folks, even this day and age in 2022, still feel discriminated against and still feel disrespected by their doctors. The reason why I was called into Banner to create and design this training, I have over 20 years of creating, designing, facilitating trainings. I'm a certified facilitator, is because there was a patient complaint. And when I went out and did research to create these trainings in the community, the #1 complaint, who can guess what the #1 complaint was? And this had to do with Banner and the ER. What do you think the complaint, #1 complaint was? Jonathan.
They just felt like they're like being pushed through, maybe.
Okay, push through. All right, Jonathan, looked like you took yourself off mute.
That was accidental, but I would simply say feel like they've been listened to.
Okay. And Glenn?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, because I was trying to set up my remote camera. I'm at work at the moment, so maybe I'll get this figured out sometime here. Sorry about that. So I just ended work, so I just jumped on onto the call here. So you were talking about diversity in the school, or just in the workplace, or in life?
Talking about what you think the complaint was and why I was called in to do training for LGBTQ with Banner.
to represent people in the university. Is that your intent? To train people at the university in this subject, right?
Yes.
Okay. So why do you think you were called in? I would think to represent a population that probably feels that they don't have a voice, or the proper voice, and they want people to be educated in diversity.
Thank you, Glenn. And Zion got it. Wrong pronouns. And there was actually a refusal to use pronouns. So thank you, Zion. Something so you think is simple as that, right? But yet there was just this refusal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a series of questions. And these questions are meant to be uncomfortable and difficult. And that's the whole point. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you a series of questions. And because this is a shortened version, I can only kind of do a few, but I'm going to try to get through as much as I can with you all tonight of this wonderful introduction. So what do you think caused your heterosexuality, and are you sure it's not a phase? So this is something just for you to think to yourself, answer to yourself honestly as possible. When and how did you first decide you were heterosexual? What did your parents and friends say when you told them you were heterosexual? If you've never slept with a person of the same sex, how do you know that you wouldn't prefer that? Bearing in mind the current divorce rate, why are there so few stable relationships between heterosexuals? There seem to be very few happy heterosexuals. Techniques have been developed that might enable you to change if you really want to. Have you considered conversion therapy? Your heterosexuality doesn't offend me as long as you don't force it or flaunt it. Why do you straight people try to recruit others into your lifestyle? Why do heterosexuals put so much emphasis on sex? A disproportionate of child molesters are heterosexual, 97%. Do you consider it wise to expose children to heterosexual teachers? When did you first realize that your gender identity matched the sex you were assigned at birth? Is finding a restroom a fearful experience for you because of your appearance? Have you ever had to think about which gendered restroom to use in public, or avoided using public restrooms completely because of your gender identity expression? Have you ever had issues using a government photo identification not matching your gender, name, or the way you look? Is it common for people to call you by the wrong name or use improper pronouns when referring to you? If you passed away today, would your family dress you in accordance with your gender identity? Would they use the right name? In the event of emergency, what are the odds that you would be mistreated or denied medical care based on your gender? How do people feel with those questions, hearing those? Have you ever been asked those questions? Powerful, recognizing my privilege in this area. Okay. Anybody else want to take themselves off mute, have a conversation? I try to have this be an interactive as much as I can.
My name's Ariana, and one of the ones that stuck out to me was just like an experience, a fearful experience, just trying to use the bathroom, something so basic on a daily thing that we do on the daily.
And what exactly about that resonated with you, Ariana?
Just the frequency with which somebody probably has, like, if you feel uncomfortable in society, the frequency with which you have to navigate that and or be exposed to that fear because of just how many times a day you need to use the bathroom.
Right? And how many times we just get up and we just don't even think about it. And we have a code here in our area, and I have a code, I have access. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Any other questions resonate with you, or you found uncomfortable?
My name is Sion. And again, just like Jonathan said, it's a huge privilege that, we don't have to come out to families or friends, that stress of, you know, what would they think, feeling like we might not be accepted. That privilege might not seem, it's a huge privilege that we don't have to, you know, worry about those things. So, and just like the last person said, worrying about bathrooms, so some of the things that we do on a regular day basis that somebody else might have to, you know, it takes a lot of courage to do for other people.
Thank you, Sion. And you're right. That resonated with me when you say you don't have to worry about coming out to your family or what your family will think. And I carried that worry for a long time. And it was until I was 18 or 19, my mom came up to me and she said, one of my friends saw a woman with her arm around you on 4th Avenue. They think you're gay. Are you? And I said, yes. And I always said, if she asks me, I will tell her, but I won't tell her myself. And so she asked me, and I still lived at home while going to college. I was on a Pell Grant, and we just lived down the street from the university, and it was very scary for me. And her response was not nice. I remember her yelling and screaming at me. And then my brother asked me, why is mom so mad at you? And I said, because I told her I'm gay. And his response was, ew, that's gross. So that was my coming out experience, and it wasn't a pleasant one. But yet at the same token, I didn't have to deal with hiding it anymore or worry about if my mom's going to find out, or how do I have to hide myself, right? But then that was from my family, but work-wise, I was pretty closeted. And it's amazing to hear what people really think about people who are LGBT when they don't think you're LGBT, and what comes out of their mouth and their honest opinions. So I've had that experience too in the work environment. And imagine you're vulnerable and you're going to the doctors, right? Or going to a healthcare provider, and you just want them to treat you with respect. And so that's important to think about. And I have stories to share with you that I got permission from these folks, because at the end of the day, as you practice public health and want to go in the healthcare field, the end of the day, the message is you're in the business of healing, not hurting, and that everyone wants to be treated like human beings and receive the best possible care. And that goes for LGBTQ+ community as well. And we had several cancer patient panels that had LGBT+ represented. And one in particular shared with me, she said, share my story widely, and that she was in her 40s, had cancer, and she went to have her intake done, and it was by a nurse and here at the Arizona Cancer Center. And the nurse asked her in the intake, what's the name of your husband? She said, Heather, and the nurse's demeanor just changed. And she had concerns about it, but then thought, okay, well, maybe something's going wrong with her. And it just got worse from there. She would come in to go get treatments. She'd say hi to the nurse. She had a very bubbly personality, this woman. And then the nurse would just turn her head. And then she had an episode where she wasn't feeling well. She came in, alerted the nurse, and the nurse just brushed her off and said, oh, you're just having anxiety. And the woman collapsed and had emergency procedure. And it was until then of her dealing with all these microaggressions that she ended up having that nurse, a complaint against that nurse, and having that nurse taken off her care. But is that in the business of healing or in the business of hurting? Did that person who took an oath end up harming that patient because of their bias or their prejudice or whatever was going on with them, and not treating that patient as a human being and giving them the best possible care? And this only happened like 4 years ago, right? And even to this day, there's still stories of people that share where a doctor had told this woman who was there with her partner, who are you? I'm her partner. Doctor says, and this is at St. Joseph's Hospital, oh, you don't matter. You need to leave the room. A doctor telling her, you don't matter. You're no one. You need to leave the room. This happens still in this day and age. It's unfortunate, but so why do we need this training? We definitely need this training to remind folks that everyone is a human being, and that why ask people the questions like, why are you getting the degree you're getting? And what is it you want to do with that? Because with that, understand you're in the business of healing, not hurting. So think about the whole person intersectionality, right? There's no such thing as a single issue because we do not live single issue lives. Audre Lorde. And if you think about, so I shared with you a little bit about my identity. I identify as LGBTQ plus, and in addition to that, I identify as Latina. I have A next to my line. In addition to that, I share with you at a Pell Grant. So then I came from low economic status. So there's other components that are in my worldview and lives that I've experienced. And so there's endless amounts of identities that I have, as I'm sure each and every one of you have as well, that there's no one single example or story that we live. And so the term intersectionality is looking at how we lead lives comprised of many things that work against or for us, depending on our environment, social upbringing, and those that we're around. So, you know, being in mindful of the whole person. And then when you're going into healthcare, recognizing the whole person. So thinking about LGBT communities experience disparities in mental health, behavioral health, physical health. They're more susceptible to risk-taking behaviors. And until 1973, homosexuality was a diagnosis in the DSM, right? Physicians are the gatekeepers of many interventions for gender nonconforming individuals, such as hormones, surgery, psychiatric care. Access may require psychological counseling. And there's cross-cultural medicine that can appear complicated, but does it really need to be? But again, being mindful of, we need to be inclusive for all and take a look at our own biases and privilege. Equitable care begins with appropriate terminology. When there's no language to speak of, the identity is silenced. There was another woman on the cancer patient panel who was in her 60s, and she had never disclosed or shared with her primary provider that she was a lesbian. And it wasn't until she had the diagnosis of cancer that she shared. But to go, you imagine going through her whole health history, right, in life till her 60s, and not sharing and disclosing her whole self. Do you think she got the best possible care? Do you think the doctors were able to really provide her care and support for what she needed for herself, not knowing who her true identity was and the whole person? So, you know, think about that when people are scared or reluctant to reveal their whole selves. Identify appropriate pronouns for individuals is so important. And like I shared with you that example of how I came to do this training for Banner was simply because of that complaint. It's very important. And there's a thing called dead naming. And the reason why dead naming that term is important is because the name that person had once had is a dead name to them. And that can be a trigger for someone if that name is used for that person, because we don't know what's associated with that name and what any harm or emotional or anguish that person may experience from that name if it continues to be used. And there are many people who will intentionally use that name, that dead name, on purpose, and it's not okay. And that was another complaint that we had from some patients with Banner. Language is varied in different age groups. And so you will see the definition of queer, where the younger generation is bringing back and empowering that term. But for the older generation, it's not okay to use. There's some stigma and harm associated with that. And ask individuals about how they describe themselves instead of using your own labels and termination is really key. So keeping up with terminology, here's quickly some terms, right? So the terminology that is current is gay, lesbian, bisexual, LGBT, transgender, sexual orientation, and it's not a lifestyle choice, right? That was something that was used in the past, or sexual preference, because it's not a choice. I personally can tell you that from experience that to go against society and society norms is not an easy lifestyle. And and to know that you could be fired, especially in the state of like Arizona, for being who you are and loving who you love, is not something I would choose. So it's not a choice. And Pronouns are chosen, they're not preferred. So making sure, and same thing with names, is it's a chosen name, it's not a preferred name. So that means like it's okay for you to call me something else when you say preferred, and that's not the case. Like I just shared, it's chosen, and this is my name. This is my pronoun. Okay, so then we have, what about queer? So we just shared that quickly. Increasing number of youth are identifying themselves as queer and taking back that terminology and empowering it. And but it has been used as an insult, so it's not embraced by all. And identity terms, again, very important to mirror those terms as patients and people describe themselves. And keep in mind that people do not like to use any terms to describe their sexual orientation or gender identity, right? Some people may not like that. So for me, for instance, I don't like the term lesbian. It's just, it has a negative connotation. And one of the reasons is a previous boss didn't know I was gay. I like the term gay because I used to watch a lot of 1940 movies with my grandmother. And when they used the term gay, it meant happy. So I prefer that term. But I did have a boss who I asked one day, it was in human resources. They said, oh, did you ever find out who was stealing and accounting? And she said, oh yeah, it was that lesbian. And so lesbian, and growing up, when I grew up, was viewed as a negative term, and like something was wrong with them, or something negative, right? So that's why, to me, I don't associate that for me in that way. So these are the pronouns. We talked about female pronouns, and we talked about the male. We have male pronouns, he, him, his, and then themselves, they, them, theirs. Then you also have the z, theirs. That is also terms. And there's more pronouns that continue to evolve. Sexual orientation, gender identity. All people have a sexual orientation, gender identity. Words people use to describe their sexual orientation, gender identity varies between people and across cultures. Keep in mind that sexual orientation, gender identity are not the same thing, although they are often confused as the same thing. Let's look a little bit further. So if you see these slides right here, right, you have sexual orientation as how a person characterizes their sexual emotional attraction to others. It can be helpful to think of sexual orientation as consisting of three parts of dimensions. You have behavior, which is like, what gender do you have sex with? Then you have attraction. Do you consider yourself, or what gender are you attracted to? Then you have identity. Do you consider yourself gay, lesbian, bisexual, straight, queer, something else? It's important to realize that some people have same-sex partner behavior, but do not think of themselves as gay, lesbian, bisexual. Others are attracted to people of the same sex attraction, right? But are not sexually active with members of the same sex behavior. So a person's sexual identity, behavior, attraction can change over time. While sexual orientation is not a choice, a person's stage of development, cultural environment can shape their own awareness, self-acceptance of their sexuality. And the T in Lgbt, transgender, something to for folks to understand, that as simply that you do not identify with your assigned birth sex at birth. And who gives you that? Who assigns that sex at birth?
The physician.
Thank you. It is a physician, right? And we do have, and I can't go into this in detail in this training, but we do have intersex individuals, and then we have folks that don't identify with their sex assigned at birth. And with our intersex individuals, many parents and physicians have performed surgeries on these individuals before they were able to share their identity or their views on that change, or give their own approval, and do not identify with that. And there's been some trauma in that community regarding that. And then I'm going to do quickly this raising awareness, reducing bias activity with you all. Amy Cutting Associates from Harvard has done extensive research on this, and we all have bias. And this is important to look at raising awareness of unconscious, not unconscious bias. And it's been shown to reduce bias once you have awareness. And that's why we're here today, to equip you with strategies and tools, right? To create more inclusivity. So I want you to look at each slide, note the feelings, judgments, reactions that emerge. Amy Cuddy and Associates also said, when you meet a person or see a person, we have two responses right away that emerge from us. And that is, we judge a person based upon their looks, like their competency, and then also their warmth. So ready? Just take a note yourself. So how warm do you think they are, and how competent do you think they are? And if you recognize any of these people, don't share. We will talk about it as a group later, but don't put it in the chat or share. Okay. So what are some of the things you recognized? I'll give you one. What patterns did you notice? So gender, right? Anybody else want to share? What other patterns did you notice in looking at those pictures?
Smiling. Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
Okay, friendliness, smiles. Who
They
else?
were all adults.
Okay, all adults. Okay, next.
Their posture.
Posture, okay.
I noticed the tattoos.
Okay, tattoos. All right. Anybody else? All right, facial expressions, right? Somebody said smile. Okay, ethnicity, no one said that here, but clothing, body posture. Yes, somebody said posture. That's great. Age, somebody mentioned they're adults. Setting, right? Skin tone, body type, sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a little bit about each person. So did you perceive this person to be warm, competent? What other feelings or assumptions did you have about this person?
Well, he looks very assertive.
Okay, so we have assertive.
Yeah, I thought that this person is probably competent because
Competent.
just the way they're standing looks like kind of scary or like intimidating.
Okay.
More competence and less warmth.
Okay, more competent, less warmth. Okay, great. Anybody else? What about, we talked about the patterns you notice. We talked about that being gender.
Just looking, I would assume male.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. All right, so I'll share a little bit about Shane Ortega, U.S. Army Sergeant in 25th Infantry Division, 3 combat tours, 2 served Iraq before he transitioned, and a 3rd in Afghanistan following his transition. Transgender rights advocate, Harvard Brown Health Midwest LGBTQ Healthcare Symposium for Medical Professionals keynote back in October of 2016. So that's Shane Ortega. How about this person? What did you perceive about them? To be warm, competent, and what other feelings or assumptions do you have about them?
Warm, competent, looks very caring and compassionate.
Okay, caring, compassionate, warm, competent. Anybody else want to chime in?
She's older, so I get maybe like wisdom or grandmotherly.
I get the grandmother one a lot on this photo. Okay, I'll share with you a bit because we got it. We're only at 30 minutes in. I got 15 more minutes. All right, Pratibha Patil, economist, attorney, first female president of India, 2007 to 2012. I don't know if she has a family. I'll have to research that one. All right, what about this person? Warm, competent, and what other feelings emerged for you?
Intimidating.
I wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley.
Okay. Well, think about this. We're doing this with practitioners, right? And say, well, how would you feel about treating this person?
Well, if they came into a clinic, now they're in a neutral setting. So I treat everyone neutral once they come in, as long as they're not acting aggressively. I always give everyone the benefit of the doubt first. But just by looking at this picture, it looks very intimidating. I don't know if but in a clinic, this could totally change in 30 seconds. They might have had I don't know, stub their toe in the parking lot, and then they come in and go, oh, hey, how you doing? I'm glad to see you, and everything changes in 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let me share with you all. Oh, wait, where's my button? Okay, John Fetterman, Mayor Broddock, Pennsylvania, tattoo on his arm, zip code, has a master's degree in public policy from Harvard, served in the AmeriCorps, received international media attention for the economic revitalization programming he started in his community. Yeah, and that tattoo is a zip code.
And Lydia, he's running for governor of Pennsylvania.
There you go. Thank you for sharing, Jonathan. All right. So what about this one?
Looks very competent.
Okay, competent.
She's smiling, so she seems warm. I'm also assuming she's female.
Okay, assuming she's female, warm. All right, so we're gonna get going here. Lynn Conway, computer scientist, electrical engineer, actually openly transgender, was fired by IBM for being transgender. So that's something to think about. And this last one, please don't share if you know this person. What do you, warm, competent?
Yeah, both warm, competent.
Okay, and I usually ask, compared to John, it's interesting because some people will say that they would be friendly with John and be more open with John. I'm sorry, with this person than they did John.
Yeah, this person looks very friendly.
Okay, charming, friendly, right, is usually what I get. Some people say, oh, I think they're attorney, politician. Ted Bundy, serial killer, rapist, confessed to killing 30 women.
I take back everything I just said.
Yeah. So, it just amazes us and how we can have these impressions, right, and our biases. And like Amy Cutting Associates said, we all have them, and just really be aware of them and how they impact who we are and how we treat people and greet people. And just to be aware of that. So which are our biases? So I'm going to go through this quite quickly. These are several of them. Just take a minute to think about which are yours. And what can you do to reduce your bias? Because ultimately the question is not whether or not we have unconscious bias. We all are human beings and we all have a bias. So which one is ours and how might they impact ourselves, others, the organization, and lead to micro messaging and microaggressions against others, like I shared with the experiences before, right? Of the examples.
Step one is awareness. There's a number of bias tests out there, I think, developed with pictures to help you identify your own personal biases.
Yes.
Communication style is one I had not thought of before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I'm constantly telling my 10-year-old daughter to alter her language if something is incorrect. Is I have a thing about that. Use correct English, correct grammar and speaking. Oh yeah, she likes to say yeah, right? I just said that. Oh yeah. Yes, say yes, please. Yeah, yes. It's a big one. Okay, so we're going to move on. So just think about that. What is your bias? We would do this a little more. I'm going to skip this video. We can another time, but this is important. Discrimination is common in the lives of LGBT. 39% are rejected by a family member or a friend. I can't tell you how many people leave during break and go home from school, university, come back, and then they're disowned, right? And cut off. 30% threatened or physically attacked. 21% treated unfairly by an employer. 30% of youth have missed at least one day of school or last month because they felt unsafe or uncomfortable. And then transgender people, 61% are physically attacked, 55% lost a job due to bias. And healthcare, there's excessive precautions or refuse to touch them, 11%. And I can't imagine what that number is now with monkeypox, because it is not true. That is just an LGBT disease. It can, anybody can get monkeypox. So blame them for their health status, 12%, use harsh or abusive language, 11%, being harassed in a doctor's office, 25%, being denied medical care, 19%. And that one, being harassed in a doctor's office, that is true. You know, that is why there's so many stories. There was a story of one of our medical students whose best friend went to the doctors. They had to coax them to go, identified as queer, mistreated at the front receptionist and left and didn't get treated, didn't even see the doctor. And then finally months later had passed and they said that cough is really bad, you really need to see a doctor. And unfortunately it was stage 4 cancer and her best friend died. So that health disparities, it happens, it's real. And it's not just because of you don't have access to care, it's because sometimes how you're treated in the healthcare environment. So HIV, sexually transmitted diseases are some of the health disparities: anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation attempts, substance use, smoking, lack of peer family support, homelessness, which is huge. When we do this training, we also do a coming out experience, and it's a very powerful experience if you all get a chance to do this. Think about this with the aging population. You know, they're twice as likely to live alone, 4 times less likely to have children. Many of these folks have been out and proud through their years, but unfortunately, as they age, they will go back into the closet for fear of discrimination. But there's resilience in the LGBT communities. Despite the many challenges the LGBT face, most LGBT people are resilient. They lead happy, healthy lives and have wonderful families, and they receive that strength from their community. And that's why the community is so strong. And thinking about the whole team, what can you do as communications is don't assume, you know, person's gender identity, just like we discussed here, and that nice assumption bias activity. Orientations based on how they look or sound, because that is not true. Don't assume you know how a person wants to describe themselves. You want to ask them. And don't assume all your patients are heterosexual or cisgender and not transgender. Avoid making assumptions. What I like is using gender neutral terms, and I don't like the word ma'am. It makes me feel old. I think of my grandmother, right? May she rest in peace. She passed in 2018. So it's like, how may I help you? Doesn't need to be ma'am or sir. It's just, how may I help you? She's here for appointment. Does it need to be gender? No, just the patient is here in the waiting room. And when I sign forms for my daughter who has 2 moms, she, you know, I really have to keep scratching out father's name, and really it'd be so simple if they just put parent name, and so it wouldn't have to scratch out anything. So what are the parents' guardian names? Do you have a wife? Are you in a relationship? Do you have a partner? Is really the better approach. Using names and pronouns, simply, you could say, I'd like to be respectful. What name and pronouns would you like me to use, or do you use? Really helping people to feel validated. Think about it when your name is called, it does something to us, right? When someone says my name, Lydia, like Michael had introduced me, it's music to our ears when we hear our name. So it's really important to understand that a name is validating, and it's honoring of who we are, especially when it's the chosen name and the right name used. So just thinking about that. And just if you make a mistake, just say, you know, my apologies, really want to get this right. How can I help? And accountability is key. Oh, please, if you see someone doing something wrong or getting it wrong, just make, you know, a nice polite comment, just saying, oh, that person's name is Jane, not John. Just being kind about it, to just do a nice, polite correction. So I'm going to share with you this really good video as we still have some moments.
As a physician, I believe that my role in my patients' lives is to get to know them as people so that I can give them the best medical care possible.
As a member of the healthcare team, my commitment is providing the best healthcare that I can for our patients. Simple.
As a healthcare professional, I try to look at things holistically and really consider the entire person when thinking about what's going to help people get positive health outcomes.
I think it's really important to create trust and let patients know about confidentiality so that they are supported in being able to talk about their sexuality or people they have sex with.
As a person of color, I've always recognized that stigma is something that stands in the way of accessing a variety of services, healthcare included.
Stigma is one of those things that's always around us, but nobody really talks about it.
Stigma means almost like stereotyping, like seeing all people in a certain way and then treating them differently because they're different than you.
When I was a resident physician, I had a patient who was openly gay, and I could see that my senior resident basically made rude remarks about the patient in front of him. I made it a point to go back after our team had rounded to come out to that patient and also to apologize. I wanted my patient to know that, basically not all people in healthcare were that way.
I go to the doctor and visit this institution where I'm incredibly vulnerable, because now my body is given over temporarily to these experts who are gatekeeping information to give to me about my own body.
So I remember going to my doctor and I asked her about just risk factors of as being a queer woman, what I should worry about or how can I keep myself safe. And she said, you don't need nothing to worry about. You're fine.
Our staff, if they're not trained properly, instead of asking people what pronouns they prefer to have used when we're addressing them, may automatically assume a pronoun is what the patient wants to use.
I experienced stigma in the healthcare setting after I had my hysterectomy. I was lying on the table and I heard one of the nurses refer to me as she. And I was a little groggy, but that was very, very clear. And she said it a second time. The second time she said it, I said, I may have just had a hysterectomy, but I am a man.
A lot of it in the healthcare setting is our own stigmas. It's our own beliefs and values that we bring into the job that hold us back from providing the care for everyone.
I had to make some decisions for myself. Am I going to say, well, they have a certain impression of who I am and what that means, and the what that means is a really important piece. And now I have to figure out how to manage that.
I decided I deserve better.
I decided that I just didn't want to be another one of those people who turned away or didn't say anything, didn't speak up.
For me, it's important to be present in the room and to ask the questions that I need, even if they feel awkward to me.
I also decided to work with the institutions that I'm a part of to let them know where they needed to work to provide more unbiased healthcare.
I decided to speak up and tell my provider what I needed.
Members of the healthcare team can be heroes by asking questions, by treating people with dignity and respect, and making sure that everyone feels comfortable.
Patients can be heroes by speaking up when they feel that there's something that's not quite right about their healthcare.
I think the best thing to do is to just remember why you came there. Remember why you work in the healthcare field.
Do your homework and learn about the communities that you serve.
Don't assume something is a certain way just because it looks that way.
Affirming care leaves patients with a more positive impression and can lead to higher patient satisfaction scores.
We can do it.
We can do it.
We can transform our institutions to engage and retain all patients in affirming healthcare.
Together we can do it.
We can do it.
We can create a world where everyone can have their health needs met as a valuable individual.
Join us.
So with that, I just want to remind you, equity for all, no matter your race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, disability, veteran status, sexual orientation, gender identity, genetic information. I helped create this poster. And we also have a commitment letter from our leaders that was back in 2017, that the University of Arizona's Health Sciences is proud of our commitment to inclusive excellence by creating welcoming, respectful environment, which our LGBTQ+ faculty, staff, students, and patients feel safe, supported, are treated with respect, inclusion, and fairness. At UHS, we strive to achieve excellence by embracing diversity. LGBTQ+ faculty allies bring substantial benefits by serving a positive role models for LGBTQ+ students, postdocs, residents, fellows, staff, alumni, patients, by supporting research on LGBTQ+ health disparities, and by shifting perspectives positively about LGBTQ+ faculty and patients. Again, homophobia, transphobia, biphobia in healthcare is unhealthy. Reflect on your own attitudes about sexual and gender. Learn about contexts in which LGBT+ folks live and define themselves. Learn more about unique health concerns. Become comfortable communicating through study and practice, role play, shadowing, create a visibly welcoming environment. And these are some ways that you can take action. We have an LGBT+ interest group committee. We have wonderful things. Michael talked about our national symposium. We also host a networking awards event, submit awards for people, attend those events. We have a speaker series, provide any pre-training. And this is one of the ways Michael's doing this, is providing us to have awareness for new hires and orientation, have ongoing policies, procedures that create welcoming and affirming environment, incorporate sexual orientation, gender identity, data and collection of electronic medical records, school records, increase the number of LGBT+ healthcare educators, and clearly state and enforce anti-discrimination policies, and promote future LGBTQ+ health providers to create health equity. Those are resources. And I just want to thank you all very much for being here tonight. And I want to leave you with a question for you to ponder, which was, how will you use what you've learned to create more inclusive healthcare and environments for all? And with that, thank you, Michael. And I wish you all the best in your public health career.
Thank you so much, Lydia. That was really wonderful. I mean, thank you for increasing my awareness this evening, and that was a powerful presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Lydia.